So Tracy, what I thought was really cool was your ability to understand this stuff, and really kind of bring to light what this all means. So I just want to give me 1 second.
Well, I think the first place to start is, what is seller financing? You guys in the intro talked about is where somebody owns a piece of property, they're on deed, they own it, they're fee simple title, and they sell it to someone, and they allow that buyer to make payments to them instead of going out and getting a bank loan. Mm-hmm. Now, these stats are first position, seller financed over 30,000 that are of record. So these are things that you can pull from the county courthouse. So it might be a deed of trust and mortgage. It might, or a deed of trust. It might be a mortgage. It might be a recorded contract for deed, but it doesn't account for unrecorded contract for deed. So if you think about seconds and unrecorded contract for deeds and things under 30,000, the numbers could even be bigger. But this is kind of what we consider to be the most sellable in the secondary market.
Yep. I'm just adjusting my screen real quick, guys. I apologize for those that are watching live. I didn't actually have it set up for a presentation on my streaming thing, so I'm just going to move things over here. Hopefully, everyone can see it okay, and we'll go from there. So, can you? It's
interesting you say that, Tracy. Sorry, Dave. 1 sec. Just sure. You say like the ones that have been recorded, the ones on record. So when I first started, we were doing these land contracts in Ohio. At the time, I don't think that you were required to record them, so we didn't. And that was strategic because we said, well, if it's not on record, then we don't have to go through the whole process with the courts and everything. And so it was very much on purpose. So I believe that there are going to be quite a few more than whatever the numbers are that you have.
I would agree in certain regions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, are you guys able to see my screen now?
Yes. So Tracy, how long have you been looking at these reports for? How many years have you kind of run numbers?
I think 2009 is when I started working with Advanced Seller Data Services to get the data. So we've been adding to it every year. So I work closely with Scott Arpan at Advanced Seller Data Services, and he pulls the raw data because he has the ability to pull from the county courthouse records. And then I give him some guidelines, and he comes up with some great things too, because he's been in the business a long time. And then he gives us the data, and then we put it into a report.
Awesome.
Cool.
So let's rock and roll here, right?
All right.
Let's see what we got.
Well, in 2021, there was 27.3 billion with a B dollar volume of seller carry notes that meet those parameters that we talked about. What's a seller carry note? That's a big number in 1 year, in 2021. So these come out usually March to April. We get them just because it takes that long. There's some counties that have trailing records. And so what was interesting was that it was a 15.9% increase in dollar volume. Now that in itself might not be too surprising because everything's going up in value, right? Every property has seen appreciation. So you might say, well, the seller financing just stayed the same. The dollar volume might have just gone up. But what was surprising to me, as it was to you, in this hot real estate market, the number of seller finance deals went up by 7%. So not only was a dollar volume increase, there was a count increase. So you might be surprised, and we'll unravel this a little bit, but so even in these hot markets where people are offering cash, over asking, no contingencies, money is cheap, there is still an increase in seller financing.
And these are newly originated in 2021?
Yes.
Wow.
January through December of 2021.
You know, we should actually have a pop quiz. How many money was generated by seller finance? I don't know if anyone would ever guess $1 billion.
No.
We should have a pop quiz now. I don't think anyone would ever guess that number.
Yeah, that'd be a fun poll, wouldn't it? Before the reveal.
I would say if I would take a guess, I don't know, like
I would have said maybe $1 billion, maybe.
Yeah. I'm thinking like just around that number. I can see over 750 billion. I would say I think I would say around, if I look at it, $1 billion to $2 billion, if that.
I remember the first time we started adding them all up, I'm getting it out like, oh, my calculator's numbers don't go out that far. I'm like, I got to do this. Like my brain was having troubles wrapping around the billion, right?
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
So it's really interesting
Wow.
when you take a look, this chart shows it by count over time. So you'd asked seller financing usage. We started tracking it this way since about 2009. And we'll come back to this later and along with some mortgage availability, but you can just see that by count, this is by dollar volume. We did by count just so you can get a general feel. There was a lot of seller financing in 2013, 14, 15, 2012. That was all after that subprime mortgage meltdown. And so we know that credit was really tight then. It's hard to get loans, and seller financing really moved in and took the place. And then as the real estate markets picked up and the conventional banking got more back in line with what they used to do, then we saw seller financing numbers go down as we would expect. But, you know, they kind of bumped along and then they bumped back up in 2021.
Interesting.
So this number here just kind of shows the last 5 years. So I pulled out the last 5 years and you can just see them broken down by residential, commercial, land. And there's category of unknown, meaning that the county didn't make it easily identifiable when they pulled the records what the property type was. So we just stuck it in an unknown bucket. Fortunately, in 2021, that bucket got a lot smaller. So when you add up the last 5 years of volume, there's over 123 billion in the past 5 years. So why do I think that's important? Because I market to seller financing notes, and sometimes we'll buy a note for somebody who's had it for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But on average, we don't market back too much past 5 years because we see a lot of refinancing or people selling properties. And, you know, a lot of times they'll have already, the note will paid off or they've sold the note. So to me, this is kind of like the availability in the seller finance market.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the number gets even bigger, right? When you add it all up. Yeah. So if you look at residential, that made up about 53% of that number in last year, and in count, it made up about 61%. And then of course, there's some commercial, that's seller finance. That was about 26% of the dollar count, 16 of just the count. And then land, that's a big one as well. So it made up about 14% of the dollar. And then we had that little bit of unknown category that I mentioned. And I think it's safe to say that it's probably a similar makeup as the other categories. So that's kind of how it all shook out when you look at residential, commercial, land, those three main categories. Does anything surprise you guys there? Or,
You know, I don't think I actually thought too much about commercial property being self-financed, but I guess it's probably a lot because you figure if someone getting into space is willing to sell in a retiring kind of thing, I would think that'd probably be more than anything else. I see residential more as like, hey, my parents passed away or something happened and I got this property. I want to sell it and self-financing some way of doing it.
Yeah. So it could be any kind of property type, right? You know, seller financing happens because there's a need that's not met by conventional financing. So either the property maybe was having troubles qualifying or the person was having troubles qualifying. And that could be because of down payment or credit, or a lot of self-employed people have troubles without having W-2 income. So there's all kinds of reasons. There are some category, and we'll get into it later, of people who do this professionally. They on purpose create seller finance notes. So we kind of divide it up between the mom and pop, like you said, somebody who maybe didn't necessarily want to, but they did, or the professional seller that does that.
So, and these are these just like contracts for deed, or is this like a private mortgage?
So this would be any type of mortgage, deed to trust, or contract for deed where the seller sold the property, gave a deed, and immediately took back a lien instrument. So there wouldn't be private loans, like where sometimes you'll see an IRA loan privately, or you'll see a private lender to a hard money lender. It wouldn't include those. It would only include where somebody was on title as the owner, gave a deed, and then immediately took back a purchase money deed of trust or purchase money mortgage, or they did a contract for deed where they haven't done the deed yet. So any of those types.
Okay, but not private lenders for.
That's right, not private lenders. Yeah.
Okay.
They had to be on the property as the owner at the same time the note was created to qualify for the stats. So this might surprise most people. It always surprises me, but the average loan to value for the seller finance deal, and this was just calculated in the states where they disclose the sales price. There are some states that don't do that in the public records, but the average down payment was 23% because the average loan to value is 77%. So what a nice big down payment. Everybody thinks seller financing is zero down. There's certainly some of those, but it's not all of them. And the average balance was $269,201. That was a huge increase from 2020. Mm-hmm. And we have a couple of ideas why that might have been. That was one of the numbers that surprised us the most, but the down payment, it's always, between 20 to 25% down payment on the residential side. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just did one of those myself. Like the one I just told you, I just got listed out for sale right now. It was a 20% down payment, which was more than I was actually asking for. I was asking for 10 and they had it. So for heaven's sakes, I'll take it.
Absolutely. We find that anything less than 10 increases the chance of default in the future substantially.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some quick questions people have. Cindy asked a question. Is residential seller financing due to a byproduct of COVID, of like loss of jobs, do you think?